Hi, everybody. Welcome to Women Seeking Wholeness. We're approaching the holidays. This is my favorite time of year. A snowstorm just blew through here where I live in Utah tonight, and it's just feeling, I don't know, super wintry, wonderlandy meets being a pain in the butt that you have to drive on the roads. But anyway, this is a great episode. Speaking of nature, speaking of earth, speaking of weather patterns, speaking of all things related to the unpredictable nature of the earth sphere we live in. Today, I've got Amy Dempster, host of the Earth Keepers podcast. She calls herself an earth tender and portal keeper. She communicates and works with spirit and the healing energies of nature. I found our conversation so fascinating when I recorded this that I went and had a session with her, which I would encourage all of you to look into doing. She really helped me to see where I was living and some of the history of the land in which I live now, Utah in general, and just some of the interesting energy grids that are running about this I-15 corridor and actually this whole Mountain West. So it was just really fascinating. She's done a lot of work, spiritual awakening, which actually happened with a series of unusual encounters with hawks, of all things. So her Instagram is Following Hawks. But now she helps others connect to nature in their own spiritual journey. So we go a little deeper in this episode, talking about some more esoteric type things. So if that's your vibe, keep listening. We go into Earthbound and helping spirits. I even shared a story of a couple of women close to me who I won't give it away, so you have to listen to the episode, but we talk a little bit about my experience with that, with earthbound spirits. Can trees communicate with us? Can land? Who or what are the spirits of the land, and what do they do? So this is a fascinating episode. I hope you love it. Amy, I'm so grateful that you're here on Women Seeking Wholeness. So great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I want to dive right in because this is absolutely, I'm just clapping. I want to dive right in because this is just literally the juiciest. I saw your, I guess you had a team reach out to me and I saw your topics and I'm like, I've been wanting to talk to somebody where we could kind of go deep on what it means to be connected to the earth, truly connected to the earth. So thank you for this. And it's very timely. We're heading into, we're in the holiday season as this airs. And right now it's not the holiday season, but it will be when this airs. And sometimes I think I know you live in Montana, I live in Utah. And I think sometimes in the winter months, we can go into that seasonal affect disorder and kind of disassociate from nature a little bit because it's so stinking cold.
Yeah.
Right.
Very true. Very true.
So, but let's start with just how this path found you. How did you become an earth keeper? I know your Instagram is Following Hawks. You have a podcast, Earth Keepers. You're just all things earth, and you live I'm looking at your backdrop there with the trees and the forest. How were you always like earthy?
Yeah, well, I mean, I grew up on a farm, so I definitely was, outside in nature a lot growing up, but I wasn't as conscious of kind of this energetic communication as I have been really as an adult. And it started really with a series of unusual interactions with hawks, which is why my business is called Following Hawks.
Yeah, I was curious about that.
Yeah. That was, when I first started sharing about my experiences, I wanted it to be very anonymous because I thought I don't want anyone to Google my name and find out I'm talking to trees. So I came up with the name Following Hawks because that was really kind of how this whole path started. Was hawks kept coming to me, and not like they hadn't been in my environment or I hadn't noticed them before, but like they were coming very, very close to me on a regular enough basis, kind of out of the blue, that it made me just start asking, like, what's going on and where are they coming from? And is this, a message that I'm missing or that's, trying to come to me? And ultimately it was really just what set me off on the journey, that really kind of called me to this path. And because, ultimately there wasn't a specific message that was coming through other than like, keep following, you're on the right path, keep going in this direction. And, so it unfolded slowly over a number of years because, it's hard to remember now because that was happening in like 2008, which I guess in my brain doesn't seem like that long ago, but even then it was kind of hard to find a lot of this information. And, every now and again I come across a book or something on animal communication, but it never quite felt right or like kind of what my experiences were. So a lot of it was really me just kind of figuring it out as I went. And in 2013, I really got this pretty strong message to move where there were pine trees and water. And thus why I now live in Montana, which unfolded pretty quickly after that message came through. But after my husband and I made the move, I would be out walking in my neighborhood. We're just on daily walks. And I started noticing that I was receiving messages. And of course, initially I was like, where is this coming from? What is this? And it was the trees. The trees were.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you right there.
Yeah.
Messages is very like general.
Yeah.
Was it like a knowing or was it actual words you were hearing? Was it coming through as a subtle like voice or
it was a little bit like, like talking to yourself in your head almost, but they were messages I didn't put there, they were things I wasn't thinking of. So it was, which is, really what I found over time is, spirit communication and nature in particular, it's subtle and it's easy to miss, yes. Especially when we're out in nature with friends and we're talking and we're walking or we have our earbuds in or we're, whatever. It's just really easy to miss because it kind of just sounds like, you're talking to yourself or you're making this up in your head. And so it's easy to dismiss it.
Beautiful distinction. And I'm glad we're going there because I feel like that is a really powerful thing you just said, that it's a message, we'll just say from another realm, whether it's nature realm or divine, which are one and the same oftentimes, but it didn't come from you. It just kind of came, I don't want to say out of nowhere, but it wouldn't have been something that you were logically ruminating on.
Right.
It just sort of came. I have to tell you, when you're talking about how you were kind of told to move to Montana, I was told in February while I was in Costa Rica in the middle of a shamanic journey that I needed to move where I am right now, that I just got here in the summer. And that's how I knew it was from the divine, because I wasn't even thinking of this place.
Right. Out of the blue.
It was not on my radar at all. It was like,
yeah.
I think we need to do a divine intervention on her because she's not even like, and I have to tell you, I could walk out my door and in 30 seconds be in a canyon with almost privacy.
Yeah.
Like nobody. And there's no one behind me. And it's like God and nature knew and were calling me to the place where I could. Well, I have many theories. It's not just about me. I mean, I do have kids and a husband and a dog. Not all about me, but it was so clear that it, and now that I'm here and I'm not completely settled in, there's still, I've had to leave my 3 college kids behind and, I'm trying to deal with that, but it just, the actual nature, like the actual feeling of the ground and where we're situated, it feels like me.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not transitioned fully over here yet, energetically.
Yeah, I totally get it. And that's definitely how Montana was. And it wasn't, even when I got that message, like Montana wasn't what I was thinking of. I just thought, maybe we'll end up around Lake Tahoe or somewhere outside of Denver or Seattle, or like somewhere a little more populated. Yeah,
we actually had our eye on Denver. We did. We had our eye on Colorado. But it's really interesting what you're saying too. And I totally relate to this. Like, when it was right, it just flowed, right? It wasn't super easy to get where you are, but it happened. Things lined up. Yes. Things conspired, we'll say.
Yeah. They lined up and also like you kind of have to make the decisions, which sometimes aren't easy. And I'm guessing you probably went through the same process where it was just like the pieces fell into place, but then ultimately like, had to actually quit my job. I had to actually sell my house. I had to actually, you know, like, and
you got to act on the message you receive or what's like.
Yeah. And there were a bunch of points where it was like, are we really going to do this? Like, we could go back. We could change our mind. It's not too late. And like at some point you really do have to take the action.
So you're in Montana and you got the call to be there and you went there and you showed up and you followed through on the inspiration and you're there. Did you experience a magnification of your spiritual gifts and intuition once you got there?
Yeah, I mean, I would say yes, but also it was a process, and it was certainly like one thing led to another thing, led to a person, led to a situation, led to, you know, that type of thing that it unfolded over a number of years. And it really was me just kind of continuing to say, okay, if I can receive these messages, if nature can communicate with me, it must, you know, logic must follow that I can communicate back, right? Like I must be able to talk.
They're trying to establish that relationship, like a reciprocal. So what was the thing with the hawks? How did you find out what that was about?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately there was no firm message like, oh, this is, you know, a deceased family member giving me a message or whatever. And even at the time, like I went and saw a couple, you know, had a couple of intuitive readings, and even in that case, everybody was like, they're just like, you know, interacting with you. There's no specific message, and so that's really what I've come to see. And it's funny because obviously when you call your business Following Hawks, like I hear everybody else's hawk stories as well. And there's enough of them that I've kind of come to the belief that, you know, hawks are involved as a species in the awakening of humanity, right? Like it doesn't make any sense otherwise, like why we would be having kind of collectively all of these hawk experiences in particular. There's some other birds, but it seems to be a lot of hawk interactions. What do you think that they're trying to communicate to us? Because
we were in St. George over Labor Day weekend and there were the hawks circling us over and over. I'm like, there's something going on here.
Yeah, well, I think that they are, on the one hand, common enough that they are kind of everywhere for the most part, and most, you know, ecosystems have hawks in them somewhere. But also they're kind of big enough and they catch your attention enough that they make you pause, you know, they don't, it's harder to dismiss them when you see them. And so again, I think it's really more just like that leading path that, you know, that message really is just like, you know, here we are, here it is, like start asking questions, start asking more, look into this further. And, you know, that was really kind of that initial spark that I needed just to be saying, there's something else out there, right? Like there's more than what I know or what I understand. And I want to ask more questions.
I think all birds, because birds have come to me a lot, like I will be, you know, agonizing over a decision or trying to move to the next step. And I feel a little stuck and then a bird will show somewhere. Like I was just talking to somebody yesterday in my office, and I was talking to her about something I was grappling with. And all of a sudden this literal like black crow showed up right outside my window, and she looked it up and it was what I was talking about, which was insane. And that has happened to me in New Zealand with some of their indigenous birds there. And for me, it's like soul freedom, but it's also kind of like look up, look outside and break the pattern. And like you said, with hawks, they're kind of circling and sending this message. It's like, look to nature, or look beyond this frivolity or what you're struggling with. And there's a higher picture. There's a higher purpose at play. I want to ask you, because I know you do a lot of work with helping people connect to their ancient ancestors in various lands. I mean, just in a nutshell, I know it's probably a process, but what does that involve?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I think, you know, us modern people have a real issue when it comes to connecting back with the land. And that is that, you know, all of us, no matter who we are or, you know, where we live now, we all have ancestors that were earth honoring, had earth honoring traditions, whatever that means. And so wherever in the world that was, it's different types of indigenous backgrounds in different parts of the world. But we all have those connections. It's just a matter of how far we have to go back. And certainly if we're of European descent, we have to go back, pre-Roman Empire. We have to go back 1,000 years or more to find and make those connections. But I think a lot of times we kind of get caught up in connecting with our more recent ancestors, the ones we know or that we can trace on paper or whatnot, or in some cases really avoiding those recent ancestors and kind of not wanting to make those connections in spirit. And so really what I suggest that people do is to kind of jump over those recent ancestors and go back and make the connections. Ask for your healed and healthy ancestors that had an earth honoring tradition to come forward and connect with you, because most of us are living on land that we are not indigenous to, and it would not be, our customs or our culture to use any kind of those traditions to connect. It wouldn't be appropriate for us to do that. But then also we don't, we're not connected to that place that our earth honoring ancestors were, right? Like, so if they come forward and they say, oh, you need to, we worshiped reindeer. Well, we don't have reindeer here. So now what do we do? How do we kind of reconcile all of that and find new ways to connect with the land? And that's really what I found, is that in a lot of cases, the land where we live hasn't been tended for so long. There's been so many generations of humans at this point that are just kind of ignoring the land, that it really is a process of starting over. And so when you have the opportunity to kind of have your earth honoring ancestors, your ancient ancestors at your side, and you can connect with any ancestors who are still connected with the land where you live, kind of introduce everybody together and say, I want to make this connection. I want to work with the land here. What do I need to know? It's a really beautiful process that begins to happen between all of these energies, ancestors on the other side of the veil, and the land itself, that can then, those spirits can step forward and share how to start over.
I love that. And you said the spirit of the land. And I think some listeners may be unfamiliar with, like, everything has a spirit, right? Plants have a spirit, rocks have a spirit, everything has a spirit. Mm-hmm. And I think we forget that. I think we look at things as just corporal, visceral, especially, I would say, especially more of the inanimate objects. Let's just say like rocks or the ground. But how do they assist? I mean, how does their spirit, let's just say, you could call it their energy. I mean, everyone has different ways of chi, whatever, life force. How does that connect into you? How do you bridge that to where you're symbiotic in your approach to how you walk the earth?
Yeah, well, the reality is that even though we have been told or conditioned in our current culture that, we're separate from the land and that there's kind of nothing going, there's a tree or a mountain or a rock out there, but it doesn't have an opinion, but it does. It has a lot that it wants to share, a lot of wisdom that can be shared. And, we are sharing the land every day with all of these energies that are around us. And spirits of the land is kind of a general term that I use that could include all kinds of different types of spirits. But they're, very involved and very much know what's happening. If there's some new, subdivision built next to you and all the dirt's getting moved around, like, they have an opinion about
like me right now.
Yeah.
We just plundered the land to build this house.
Yeah. And that's a process of kind of coming forward and being able to say, like, here's what's happening. Here's why this is happening. Do you have any feedback about that? And really kind of trying to work together with the spirits, because, I think most people, regardless of what your belief system is, most people have entered a house or a place of business or, something at some point and thought to themselves, things don't feel right here. Like something is weird about this. Or the flip side being like, ooh, I really love it here. I love the feeling of this place. And it's
like the vibe, right?
Yeah, regardless. Yeah, it's all being cultivated by the energies there. And in some cases, it's being cultivated between a partnership between people who are there and spirits who are there. But so the more you can begin to engage them and let them know, number one, you're aware of them. And number two, that, you'd like to participate together with them. You'd like their opinion on things that are happening. It really is quite remarkable kind of what will begin to happen and the relationships that will develop between you and the land itself.
So as I'm listening to it feels like it's just like maybe the invitation is there. They're just, these spirits or
very much so.
This energy is just waiting to be connected to. I think a lot of people have the unhealthy assumption that, that the land is for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it starts in Genesis in the Bible about men having dominion over everything. And I don't know that was the literal translation, because it's kind of fueled some unhealthy colonization in the name of God.
I think it was like the wrong word or the wrong interpretation of the word, because
it's like caretaking. It's more like
I was gonna say my feeling is the dominion word really was more like stewardship, right? That was like it's our responsibility to care for,
right? And it doesn't even mean that humans are better than. I know this is probably a really novel thought for many people, but it's something I've been learning lately, is that we're all one organism. And so, a tiger or a flower, right? They have the same worth. Mm-hmm. They have the same right, you could say, to be here and live. And they don't exist for us.
Right.
So it's just a whole different paradigm shift from, at least for me, as I've gone closer to understanding the divine feminine and Mother Earth and the soul of nature, really, that we have that sacred stewardship. You mentioned the word stewardship, that we're kind of all in this together.
Yeah.
That we're all, we have this beautiful divine responsibility to cultivate and nourish. So the earth nourishes us and we nourish the earth.
Yeah, there's a lot that we can do that other parts of nature can't, right? We have arms and legs. And that was kind of where the trees started out with me. They wanted me to pick up trash. That was kind of how it started. But you realize when you think about that, dominion or that stewardship is like, yeah, we are all in this together. And, we don't, the trash was bothering the trees but they have to stand there and look at it all day. And so we can use our arms and legs to help pick it up and clean it up and make it better for all of us. Okay.
So I have a question for you. I used to laugh at people that talk to trees. I used to laugh at people that were like, quote unquote, tree huggers. I used to think that was the silliest thing, but kind of cool too. So I wasn't sure where to place it. But I know you talk about how trees, because you brought up trees just now, how do trees communicate with us? How does that work?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's really how all of nature works, whether it's something you can physically see, like a tree, or if it's an ancestor or something, something like that. And it's really just telepathy, right? Like that's, which is a skill that we're not taught, or we may be taught, maybe doesn't even exist or isn't a thing. But it's how everything else communicates with everything else that way, right? Just energetically. And so everything has its own, just like you have a different communication style than somebody else, or you speak a different language than somebody else. And so you might have to make some extra efforts to communicate. The same thing is happening with nature. And it's a frequency, right? And so just like the radio station, right? You're dialed into one frequency and say the tree is dialed into another one. And so if you want to communicate, you kind of have to you both have to get on the same station in order for the message to come
so
through.
How do you do that?
So it's really a matter of, again, first of all, remembering that we receive information in all kinds of ways other than, just hearing somebody talk to us. And so, and this is when it gets into, when people talk about being clairvoyant or clairaudient, but really it's ways your body is sensing, communication other than.
So it's more
language.
Somatic. It's more.
Yeah. So it might be a feeling. Yeah. So it might be an image. I think a lot of people get caught up on whether or not they're clairvoyant, and a smaller percentage of the population, I think, is clairvoyant. Although I'll find that the longer I've done this work, the easier it is for me to see images. But initially that was not something that I received really strongly. So it may come in pictures in your mind's eye. It may come in words or a stream of consciousness. I find the most common way that people sense these messages is through their body and through feelings. And that's the easiest one to disregard and to pretend,
because the scientific community, that's why they think this is all so woo, right?
Right. Yeah. Where you're just like,
we don't have
a feeling that tree's talking to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what is she smoking?
Right.
But we don't have the sophisticated scientific instruments to measure these somatic sensations in the body and how those feelings come through, because it's a very subtle frequency. And you mentioned this before. It's when you'll know when you're receiving a message, when it is subtle.
Right.
When it's almost like a whisper or just a flash. Also, what came to me too is when you're talking about telepathy, you mentioned that it's frequency based. Mm-hmm. So I like to think of the body as like a living antenna that is a receiving instrument. Mm-hmm. And so when we're open, which is a very feminine, it's very divine feminine. When we're open, we can receive these frequencies intuitively. And for some people, they'll get a sensation in a different place, or,
right.
We're all different in how this receiving instrument receives frequencies.
Right. Your heart might start racing, or you might feel something in your stomach, or you might get, it's really common. People get goosebumps when something, resonates with them, but those are always your body's receiving information. And so from that regard, it is a little bit like learning to speak another language, because you just have to start interpreting what it means to you, what it means to your body. And so, what it means, I have a very specific feeling I get in my stomach, but it's different than anything else when I go into a house or a location where there's like earthbound spirits.
Well, let's talk about that.
Yeah. Like when I can pretty much
creepy,
walk into a
but I'm
place and be
so
like,
intrigued.
Yeah, I may not see it, but I'm like, I know it's here somewhere because I can feel it in my body. But it took enough times of having that experience to be like, okay, that's what that feeling means. And that's really what we just kind of have to practice over time.
Yeah, I think we're just swimming in all of this unseen. These different realms and things, and it can be kind of scary and creepy a little bit. But let's talk about earthbound spirits, because I've had my own interaction there, where most people that are listening to this podcast are probably empathic, because we're talking a lot about telepathy and clairvoyance and clairaudience and clairsentience. And we've actually had a couple podcast episodes about that. But fine tuning this empathy to where you stay protected. Mm-hmm. And so that you're able to keep your heart open while also being grounded. Yeah. and
you can remember all those things. Yeah.
All those things. Because you don't want to shut that down. You don't want to shut the heart down, or, because we are that receiving instrument. And if we shut that down. So tell me a little bit about earthbound spirits and how you've been able to either shield yourself or maybe even communicate so that there's not. I have my own feelings on why spirits are earthbound, but I'm curious about what your experience has been there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think our culture, whether that be TV, movies, religion, whatever, has very, very much colored our opinion of earthbound spirits. And so many people are either just like completely petrified and afraid of having that experience. Some people are having way too many experiences with them, right? Like their house is full of them. They
don't have the right boundaries.
Right. Yeah. Which is for a variety of reasons that might be happening. And a lot of people just like shut it out altogether because they don't want to be scared. They don't want to have that experience. And so, I kind of usually start this conversation with just understanding that, like, these are people's loved ones, right? Like we don't have a process in our culture for making sure our dead loved ones get where they're going after they die, right? We just think that like you die and I don't know what happens. Like that, I think the pearly gates.
I don't think there's a one size fits all of what happens.
No.
I think that because we have soul freedom, we get to choose whether we move on or we stay.
Very true.
I will tell you, I lost a sister to suicide who left behind 5 children. And she was earthbound for a while because she has 5 children,
right?
Young children.
Yeah.
And so, yes, you're right. Sometimes religion can color that like, oh, they're not worthy, or they, they didn't do
or this is what
right.
happens when you die. And so you need to do this.
Yeah. They didn't do something right.
Yeah.
When in fact, some of them are still they have the earthly residue of, they're not conscious that they're stuck.
Completely. That's many times the case. Yeah. Because unfortunately what happens is like, I think this is the other thing that we don't understand very well in our culture is like your consciousness exists, whether you have a body or not, right? When you go to sleep at night, your consciousness is out for a walk in the universe because it doesn't need to sleep like your body does, right? Like it should be pretty easy for us to understand. Like
it's
your
not
consciousness
bound
continues without your body.
Yeah. It's not bound by time and space as we know it, our consciousness.
Right. And so it's in some cases for some people, like very much a shock and a surprise to realize like, oh, I'm still here in the same exact way that I was. I just don't have a body now. And so that's very shocking for many reasons. And why we need to have compassion, when we come across these energies is that either they have realized what has happened, but they're not sure what to do next. In some cases, they really genuinely, many, many cases don't know they're dead. They have no idea.
I don't get that.
They're really just repeating their days.
How could they not know that they're dead?
Yeah, well, it's usually usually in that case, it's a very quick or shocking experience. And so I had a really interesting dream where I got to experience this like from the other side, right? Because in many cases, I do come across earthbound spirits in my work and help them get crossed over. And maybe a year and a half ago, I had this dream where I was being attacked and the person, I can't remember exactly. I think they pulled a gun out and shot me or something. Like it was very in the dream. It was like everything was building up to this moment. And in that moment I was like, he killed me, I'm dead. Right. And then literally 1 second later, I was like back in my house making tea or something like that. And I was a little confused. I was like, that's weird. I guess I didn't die. And then I just moved on. And in the dream, like some friends came to see me and they had to have a conversation with me where they were like, so here's what happened. And I was like, oh, this is what it's like when I come and have a conversation with somebody and say, I have some bad news for you. I like try and convince them that this is what's happening. But to have that experience in my dream where I'm like, I was pretty sure something was about to happen, but then it just didn't happen, is how it felt in my dream. And so I think, and that's my sense is that, unless you really knew, and we're like expecting and, we're preparing yourself. And you had
like a process leading up to prepare you.
Yeah. Or, you had a very sudden experience. It could kind of be like, wait, I thought that was going to happen, but here I still am. So it must not have happened. So let me just go ahead and, take a shower and get ready for the day.
So yes, I'm going to share an experience here. And so someone very close to me, she was in her apartment one day. She's college aged. This was several years ago. And all of her roommates were leaving to go to, I think it was church, actually. I think it was a Sunday and they were all going to church and the whole apartment complex kind of was like filtering out. And she was going to go to church, but she just felt like she needed to stay home. And anyway, to make a long story short, it ended up that her next door neighbor committed suicide, who was an 18-year-old girl who had just broken up with her boyfriend, and the boyfriend had found her and was banging on the wall and grief stricken. And she had called the cops and all of these things. And this spirit of this girl sort of attached to my friend and was sort of earthbound with her, and not in a dark, menacing way. I mean, it was very like, because my friend had bonded to the family, bonded to the boyfriend, just because she was first on the scene. Mm-hmm. And she feels like she was prepared to be first on the scene. Mm-hmm. She's a very courageous person. So in saying this, like, we got together, she said, I know that your sister committed suicide and I have this happening. So what we did is we got together and we said a prayer to bring my sister, who'd been mm-hmm. gone for several years, to take this earthbound friend mm-hmm. And bring her where she needed to be, whether it was to the light or with her ancestors or whoever, so she could create safety and that her family was okay and all these things. And it was just so interesting. We had tingles. We were sitting in my living room and we just had tingles all over our body. And we knew that something was happening with that. So that was my one experience of just something very firsthand, where it was just, we don't know how to do this. We're not shamans, right. But we're just going to pray.
Right.
And we're just going to assume that because we have love for these two souls, that they're going to find each other. And that my sister Shauna, who ended her life, not the same way, but, of course, ended her life, that she would be acting as a guide for, this young soul to transition.
Absolutely. And it's a beautiful service that we, and I think that's what's missing from our current culture is this understanding of that, like, we as incarnated humans, like, this is part of our role, and is to help our friends, our family members, get to where they are supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And if you look at any kind of indigenous culture, they all have processes and stories and things about, how people get to the land of the ancestors, how people, it might be that they go in a boat, or that but there's always like this time or this process in between their death and the land of the ancestors.
It's not purgatory. I hate to tell everyone.
No.
Like, it's not that. Yeah. Unless someone is in their own self-imposed hell in their own process with that. But there is no place where, at least this is what I have come to know in my body and being, that there is not a place where the people who were bad go when they die, and they have to pay penance.
I have not seen that experience either. That's not been. But you're right. But there is some self-imposed, there are people who stay here are staying because, either they're completely confused, or they have an attachment or connection, or,
or they're trying to send a message, or they feel bad, or
that they feel like they need to stay. And to kind of explain what had happened with your friend as well. When you stay too long, you're disconnected from source. You're not receiving energy like you do when you have a body. And so you have to get energy from somewhere else. And the only place you can do that is through a living human. And so those are attachment spirits, is what they're called. It's very common. And part of why it's very common is because we have an epidemic of ghosts who are not passed over, right? That they're here and they have to get their energy from somewhere. And so you're right. It's 99% of the time, it is not malicious. They're not trying to do some evil, dark, horrible thing. They don't know what else to do. It's their only choice.
Yeah. And one other thing I've noticed with ancestral healing is that, you can have an ancestor that's both hindering you or helping you. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they're feeding off of your light. They have unresolved stuff. Maybe they've carried things down epigenetically. Mm-hmm. And in that sense, most of your ancestors would want to help because it helps to clear the family line, and they're learning too. That's the thing. It's not like there's an immediate knowledge or wisdom gained when you cross over. I have felt the presence of like grandparents and ancestors and loved ones. In fact, I have an aunt who committed suicide when she was 32. My sister was 34 when she committed suicide. There's a lot there, but the point being, like, I've been doing I'll do a retreat, and I kid you not, I might have, 30, 40, 50 women in my group, mm-hmm. and the room's full. And and everyone knows it.
Right. Right.
And it's not just guardian spirits coming to help. Maybe sometimes it is, but oftentimes it feels like it's just these people learning and trying to integrate their earth experience with what they're now, going through and learning to progress. So there's just so much we don't know, but there's so much you can feel somatically, like you were talking about, that we can sense telepathically.
Yeah. And we don't just, die and one moment later we like inherit all this, wisdom and knowledge, and we can be helping spirits, right? There's a process for that. And that's, part of why I think a lot of times people feel like, it's okay to let, ghosts of their loved ones hang around in their house all the time. And, well, it's my mother, it's my sister, it's my whatever. And that's fine if they have gone and, crossed over and had that full experience and are now back as helping spirits. But if you're holding on to them and they haven't had that experience and they haven't done that, they don't have any different wisdom than they did, while they were here living. Like, we need to let them have that process, and then they can come back and assist us.
And that can be a very traumatic separation for many people.
Very,
especially
very
I would say parents who've lost a child, maybe.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So let's talk about, when putting this all together, like we're talking about nature spirits and earthbound spirits. Of course, there are many levels of helpers, you could say, that show up for us. How is it that you feel supported because I think a lot of people are feeling so lonely right now. You can be surrounded with a lot of people, but there's so many unknowns happening in the world. And a lot of people are experiencing transitions on different scales in their personal life, their professional life, with their families and their relationships. So how is it that we can take some of these things we've been talking about and really just get that support or feel that support from nature and the other side of the veil, the helping spirits.
Yeah, the helping spirits. Yeah. Well, yeah. And it's very layered, I think, and I think that's one of the important connections or reconnections that gets made when we spend time, outside and with nature. And so much of our life now we spend, even if we're outside, right, we've got rubber soled shoes on and we don't have our feet on the earth, or we don't touch a tree because we don't want anyone to look at us and think we're being weird. Like, we don't actually have that physical connection. And when we do that, it starts, first of all, it immediately brings healing to us, to be in the vibration of nature. And so when we're feeling overwhelmed and we're feeling anxious and we're feeling depressed, the easiest, cheapest, healthiest thing we can do for ourselves is just to go outside, just get your feet on the earth, just, sit and lean your back up against a tree, however feels most comfortable for you. And even if you're not in good health, or you're not, you can't get out and walk around, you can put a chair in your yard and put your feet on the ground. All of those things really start triggering that connection with nature, trigger that healing vibration in our body. And it is, it's why we feel better when we go outside. I think universally people will say, I went outside and I feel so much better. Absolutely, you do. And so, I think that's one of the simplest, easiest things we can do without it feeling like, oh gosh, I have another thing on my to-do list. Or
I have to tell you, almost every time I ask this question of an influencer or teacher such as yourself, who are out kind of sharing various messages, and I ask them for like a couple tips on how they stay connected, everyone brings up nature. Literally, like 95% of them bring up nature. And you're a nature person, so it's up for you anyway. But every walk of life, every modality, whatever, it seems like that just keeps coming up. And I think that's where we're moving as a species. I think that we're coming. I don't know. Things can happen. Systems are crumbling. Different things are playing out. I think that it's just a slow I don't even know the word, but it's just a slow process for bringing us back to home.
Yeah.
You talk about it being the land of our ancestors. I mean, here we are in America, what we've done to Native Americans, what we've done to the nature spirits and the lands. I think there's just going to be a reckoning. Mm-hmm. And it starts, I think, as you said, with your tip there of just getting outside. I think that's where it starts. And like I said, I used to think it was really fruity for people to talk to trees and the ground. And now, I mean, it's, for me, it's like putting my hands on the grass or my feet in the soil and feeling the sun and just communing. That's the best word I have. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's not a verbal, prayer or a summoning of any kind. It's just communion.
Yeah.
And that feels a lot better to me than sitting in a chapel sometimes with fluorescent lights with stiffness, right?
Right.
It's a different kind of connection to all that is.
Right. And you realize where kind of the idea of churches, being where they were in the first place, going back further, although my belief is that a lot of modern churches 100% know this and understand this in where their churches are placed, is that they were placed in places on the land that had energies that were heightened, where it was easier to commune with the divine. And so that's why the churches were placed there in the first place. And so that was really what was attempting to be replicated.
Rennes-le-Château in France with the Mary Magdalene Chapel, the energetic grids. And there's so much we could go into on that. Like you talked about, you just got back from Sedona. And Sedona is if anybody feels, if you have a propensity to be able to feel energies of lands and you go to Sedona, like put your seatbelt on. I was buzzing. Every time I go there, I just feel the power of that land and I'm buzzing Well, Amy, I feel like we could do a follow-up episode and go deeper.
We could just keep going.
I love the directions we've gone. And where can people find you online?
Yeah. Well, my website is followinghawks.com, and you can find my podcast there, which is called The Earth Keepers. And I have a free video that you can sign up for that's all about how to communicate with the spirits of the land.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. This was super fascinating.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Never underestimate time spent immersed in nature. Forgot to mention in the intro that I spent a week in Mount Shasta, California. Just got home probably 4 or 5 days ago and still trying to integrate back into normal life after immersing myself in forest bathing and walking around Lake Siskiyou and, of course, hiking up to the base of Mount Shasta, which is that area is considered to be the root chakra of the world. And I was reflecting on some of the things that Amy talked about in our discussion about how, there's a vibe to each place you go, and the land is always trying to communicate to us and always trying to assist us in our healing. And we don't completely understand all of it. Really just coming forward, like she said, and asking, what do I need to know? And not being afraid to ask, kind of like a prayer, right? So the earth does want to share her wisdom. She is part of our healing, and we are the bridges. So remember that this week or the next couple of weeks as you walk about the holidays. And I just want to wish all of you a very Merry Christmas. Know that 2022 is on my radar as the year to unearth some more powerful things about the feminine and to invite you into a space of healing and connection that I'm very, very, very excited about. So have a glorious couple of weeks. Have a Merry, Merry Christmas. And we will talk to you next time on Women Seeking Wholeness.